understanding, and accessibility. Geoffrey Tumlin knows how communication works and how good communication can work for you. Over years of study and practice, Geoffrey has formed a deliberate and straightforward method for strengthening interpersonal communication skills. Now these methods, which he's brought as a consultant to major international companies, are distilled into simple-to-follow recipes. Easier than bagels. Geoffrey hadn't written this book yet the day I called him, but he knew the principles. Calmly and thoughtfully, he listened to my outrage. What he suggested was, initially, a little hard to swallow. I was part of the problem. I was responsible for the solution. But then, step by step, we walked through the moves I could make to get what I wanted. And following his guidance, which is now pinned to the wall of my cubicle, I got there. No, we got there. In the end, the person I was communicating with and I were both satisfied with the solution. It meant muting my good comebacks. Sarcasm was out, so was being snide. I needed to be honest, I needed to be clear, and I needed to listen. Then, and only then, as Geoffrey so patiently explained, would I be in a position to make the most of the situation. It worked. As a journalist, I once had an opportunity collaborating with 3 brilliant and dogged colleagues to gather enough archival interview and physical evidence to document a disturbing and powerful war crime. We wrote our news story and handed it to our editors, who were skeptical. Their concern was protecting the credibility of our entire company. Our concern was getting the story out and letting the truth be told. We spent months fighting, not communicating, over this. Finally, after a different editor stepped in to mediate, we found a way to compromise, to get the story out, and to bring about a small resolution for the soldiers who had fired and the civilians who had been fired upon. The story went on to win a Pulitzer Prize for revealing with extensive documentation the decades-old secret of how American soldiers early in the Korean War killed hundreds of Korean civilians in a massacre at the No-Gun-Ri Bridge. While the recognition came for our investigative work, I know, as do my colleagues, that the real success was breaking our internal logjam and moving from fighting about the story to resolving our differences and helping the story see the light of day. What a difference good communication makes. The ways that we communicate and the ways that we don't shape our relationships, and our relationships shape our lives, says Geoffrey Tumlin in this wise, important book. The most important people in our lives deserve our very best communication. I'm working on it. Martha Mendoza. Introduction. In the 1970s, when I was 6 years old and you could meet arriving passengers at the airport gate, my dad and I waited at Houston's Intercontinental Airport for my uncle to arrive from North Carolina. When the plane pulled in, I worked my way to the front of the crowd. I could see his big smile yards away, and I ran to meet him. "You got here fast," I said as I gripped him in my best bear hug. "Next time, I'll come on a spaceship," he replied, "and get here even faster." My uncle probably wasn't the only person at the airport that day who, if asked to make a prediction about the future, would have guessed that spaceships or jetpacks might soon beam us around the globe. But they would have been wrong. 40 years later, we still get from one place to another pretty much the same way, from the fossil fuels to the uncomfortable seats. Instead of revolutionary ways to transport our bodies around the Earth, humans spent the past few decades figuring out how to speed our words and images around the planet. The transportation revolution never arrived. We got a communication revolution instead. Around the time that I was greeting my uncle at the gate, the world's first generation of computer geeks was busy trying to configure a personal machine that wouldn't break our desks and a phone that didn't need a cord. Advances in computing and telecommunications gathered speed through the 1980s and 1990s. Then, in the mid-1990s,